Greetings and salutations, adventurers. I'm Matthew. Welcome back to Nerd News Today. And the reason I'm kind of mixing up my intro here, not doing it the normal static, boring way, is because today we're looking at a piece that is full of action and adventure, and a really cool one. That's because today in our hands we have Diamond Select's latest statue from their Indiana Jones line of PVC figure dioramas. And this one is the Bridge Escape PVC diorama. This one I believe is meant to be straight out of Temple of Doom towards the end of the film there. Very huge, very awesome climactic sequence here, and it's now being honored in a statue format that pretty much anybody out there can afford with very few problems. Previously in this channel, we've taken a look at a few other things that Diamond Select has done in the world of Indiana Jones, including a resin piece and also a jumbo-style action figure, both of which I really enjoyed. But both of those things have a much higher price point than what we're looking at today, so this one here is a lot more affordable for all you indie fans out there. So I can't wait to show you how he looks out of the packaging, but first, let's just talk about this box real quick. And this is like all of the PVC figure dioramas that you'll get from Diamond, really any of them out there. They have the same style across the board. And that's to say, just usually a square or a rectangle with a bunch of windows and very simple graphic design on it. So in the case of this Bridge Escape here, we've got some great big windows on the left and the right and the front, so you can see everything inside this statue. And as always, the Diamond Select sunroof is ever present. I never get sick of seeing that Indiana Jones logo, by the way, and I just love that red and yellow gradient. Just so much energy in that, and it's fun to see that across this piece in all different sides, including the back of the box, which once again gives us an image of the statue. The fun thing about this one, though, is it's kind of like a snapshot. Whereas typically it's usually just like an image of the statue and that's it, nothing behind it. In this case, they're kind of contextualizing here and putting a background behind it that really kind of reminds you of exactly what scene this is from. And in case you didn't remember, the bio here does actually have some more information. So again, we're talking about putting some context here. This little handful of sentences goes a long way, and it's really nicely done and helps remind you exactly when this happens in the Temple of Doom. Now, in spite of having this really nice bio here, one thing that is surprisingly absent from this box is credits to who made this piece. Now, normally on the PVC pieces, we do get credits for who made it. We get a designer and a sculptor. We don't usually get that with resin pieces, so that's not too abnormal in a resin piece. But on a PVC piece, that's kind of unusual here because all it really says is just that this was, a statue, and that's really about it. There's nothing else there. So I wish I could credit who made this piece. If you made it out there and you're watching, hey, great job. Well, I would assume great job. We're going to see in a few minutes here, but my initial reaction here is one of a lot of positivity. So let's go ahead, open up our Indiana Jones PVC figure diorama of the Bridge Escape scene, and let's take a closer look at him from all angles. And here is our Indiana Jones statue now out of that box, and initial impressions of this statue is, man, this is kind of a steal, I feel like, and that might be a very good way, a very Indiana Jones way of putting it. Let's go ahead and do a quick rotation right now, although it's a little difficult to get everything in frame at once because this is a very uniquely shaped piece, as you're gonna see here. But you're gonna be able to basically see right now in this shot about 90–95% of the piece, more or less, I'd say. But yeah, you guys are already noticing here, I mean, besides the really great details and deceptively good paint job here, you might notice just how the balance of this piece is, and it's almost unbalanced. And, well, that makes me have some questions, but we'll come back to that in a little bit here. But yeah, I gotta tell you guys, this is my first time really kind of actually looking at this thing, and there's so much interesting little bits and baubles in here. And wow, this is a really unique Indiana Jones piece. So I'm going to go ahead and start the rotation in 1 minute, and we're going to kick this review off in the way that I like to start all of my videos, which is by asking the question of whether or not this looks like the person it's supposed to be. And the question in this case is whether or not this looks like Harrison Ford. And that is an interesting question here because this is not your typical Indiana Jones piece. I mean, really, you can think about anything that's been done in the world of indie in the last few years, and that's essentially been either Diamond Select, or it's been Hot Toys, or it's been more recently Mattel doing their action figure line, which unfortunately has not really lasted very long. I think it's basically dead now. Now, previously we did look at an Indiana Jones piece, as I mentioned, that was a resin bust. Resin typically has like better detail, whatever. And I thought the sculpting was decent. It was pretty good. I wasn't like super impressed with it. I will admit that I think this head sculpt we're looking at right here is a lot better than what we saw in that resin piece, and that's kind of a shocker. So, you know, I would say again, though, it is kind of like from a certain angle, it's like him, and from other angles, it's a little bit less like him, but it still has the Indiana Jones vibe. It still has the Harrison Ford vibe. So, yeah, in this case here, I feel like it's from this angle especially, like, they've nailed it. especially from a distance. If you start looking at it maybe a little bit closer up, it might not be as apparent who this is meant to be, but I think it's still pretty close. And I don't think Harrison Ford is one of those guys that's like super difficult to sculpt, but he does have the kind of face that if you mess up a little part of it, it's all very noticeable because of the shape of his face, because of how his eyes are and how they recede into his skull, because of his chin, his cheeks, etc. He's one of those guys that it's a lot more noticeable and a little bit less forgiving if you don't quite get their likeness 110% there. But in the case of our Dr. Jones here, I think they really got this. I really like the sculpting. I think the nose looks good, chin looks good, eyes, lips, like all the little pieces are here. Fedora is quite nice as well. Even from this angle, I think it's still really quite nice. I think we lose it a little bit once we turn over here, and right here in particular, it kind of starts to look like Alec Baldwin to me. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. Let me know if I'm alone in this here. But once we get back to like this right here, like that's definitely Harrison Ford. And if we get to this 3/4 profile one more time, again, like this is my favorite way to look at it. This is absolutely Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones right there. And it's also helped by just how like dirty and filthy he's looking too. Like not just the 5 o'clock shadow, but just all the dried up crust on his face, because this is a pretty action-packed moment in Temple of Doom, and we really get that. And even though his facial expression might be a little bit blank, let's just say, because it kind of is, it also is still pretty intense. I say it's blank because there's no like real facial expression, but it's also intense because of his stare, because of the scene, and especially because of the body language. So let's go ahead and actually spend a little bit of time talking about that right now, because that's also one of the strengths of this piece here. And again, this isn't like rewriting anything here. It's still really a fairly simple piece as far as the layout of what our subject is doing here, but the way it's executed is really, really a knockout. I mean, man, this is really cool. And also, before I get too deep, I want to point out the fedora as well. Great detail in that fedora. Just so much really good stuff in there. Whether it's just like the buckles or the leather texture, you know, there's some good stuff here that they've really packed into a fairly affordable Indiana Jones statue here. You got to dig those scars and cuts too. But yeah, let's go ahead and start talking about that body like I was saying we were about to do. And I think this really looks strong here because the body language is so intense. So this scene, if you don't remember, is from Temple of Doom. It's right towards the end when Indy is threatening to cut the bridge down, and this way nobody gets the treasure everybody was hunting after. And that's why he's currently brandishing that machete very menacingly. And currently he is at the opposite side of that bridge because, well, there's the rest of it on this piece of the statue here. And you guys can see that it kind of just cuts off right around here from the rest of the piece. So our Indy is ready to take action even at the cost of potentially his own life. So yeah, really cool piece, really cool statue. And what I'm really digging is just how tired and also imposing this Indy is, because his face is so ragged, it's so intense. It's also a little blank, like I mentioned, but it's not like vapid. It's kind of just like he is tired, he wants to go home, he's had enough of this nonsense, and his body is still saying like, hey, he's ready for action. Like this arm especially, like this is a tensed up arm. He's ready to do something. He's ready to chop that bridge. He's not going to bluff. He will do it if he has to. The sleeve has already been torn off of his arm, whereas on this side here, we still have the sleeve hanging out on him. He's also got his whip in this hand, which you can see a little bit of. We'll take a closer look at that later on. His knees are torn up on his pants. His shoes are dirtied. His outfit is especially messed up. I mean, and again, let's go to that back for a section here, because I didn't even realize this because, well, obviously you can't see the back of the statue in those boxes. I didn't realize he has like so many tears and cuts on his back. And that's cool. That's a great little touch that I don't think anybody really expected, and adds a lot of accuracy to the piece. And again, too, I want to talk about the sculpting, because I think the sculpting of the fabric here is just like 10 out of 10 all over. Like, just so many great little, very photorealistic elements here. I mean, especially this sleeve and the way it's all connected. Not just the fabric, because, you know, to be fair, fabric is quite difficult, but the arm here, too, like the musculature on this arm, too, like that's just really good, really strong looking, and very anatomically correct. So yeah, overall, really, I'm not really complaining much here because there ain't much to complain about. I mean, again, could the likeness be a little bit better? Maybe the tiniest bit, and then it would be like perfect. Right now, I'd say we're a pretty solid 8 out of 10 for that. And then when I start factoring in the body sculpting and the base and everything else, I mean, it's overall an extremely strong piece, a surprisingly strong piece. And again, you remember that they've also done some resin stuff, and I wasn't quite as into it as I was with the PVC. But that's kind of the nice thing, too, about PVC, is it allows you to have a little bit more freedom to do stuff like make this entire bridge set up right here. And yeah, so I want to talk about a few other details before I get into that base, though, because that base is almost as much of a star of the show as our Indy figure is right here. But again, let's go and take a close look too at his outfit from the front. Just look at all of the different folds in the clothing. You can see the pockets. Like, this is a sweaty, wet, but also just really messed up outfit because it's just been through so much. Man, just really, really lifelike, I gotta say. And that pose too makes it even more lifelike. I like that he has his gun belt here. There's also a little bit of wear in that leather, and you can really see it by the part that closes and snaps shut. His belt as well. And just, again, really digging all these folds in the fabric, because that's one of those things where if you're doing something really realistic, the minute one of those folds is off or wrong, you'll notice it, and it's gonna look pretty bad. But everything here, the weight is just perfect. Nailed it all around here. Let's talk also about his pouch. We're going to try to talk about that pouch, which is right over here. This looks like it actually is a separate piece that can kind of move around. You're not going to be able to get it off easily. It doesn't come off either. But it's there, looking very nice as well. Same thing, just great sculpting all around. We'll talk about this whip. Now, this whip is not as detailed as we've seen maybe in other pieces. But again, it is a smaller piece. There is no real like leathery braided texture like you might see in other whips. So there is some, like, on this part here on the bottom of it, which you guys can see a little bit there. It's a little tiny, I know. But I don't quite remember really what the texture was for that whip, so this might not be inaccurate. I'm sure it's actually fine, even if it's not. It's a little detail, and it is also fairly obscured here. But I wanted to make sure you guys could at least see a little bit of that whip, because it's there and coiled up ready for some action. And again, too, looking at that sleeve one more time from this angle, you're really seeing just all the attention to detail that went into this piece. But, we got to talk about detail here, because when I think detail, I'm thinking about this base now. And here it is from behind. So this is basically basically one of the entrances to that bridge, and you're starting to see just this difference in textures. We have these great little pieces of rock here, along with a braided rope that's holding the bridge on this side here, holding that line across it and anchored into the ground. And it's got all this paint detail too that is really quite nice, really beautiful to look at. It feels good to touch also. And again, going off on texture too some more, I mean, we have a rock base here, so we've got like almost two different kinds of rock to talk about. And painting also, there's actually a few different tones of painting here. I think the rock has at least, let's see, we have a darker shade, which you're seeing a little bit towards the bottom. There's a general base shade. There's a highlight shade. And then on top of that, we have this kind of like brown, yellow, ochre shade that's more like dirt and stuff. So the base has a lot more colors than you normally would see with a PVC figure diorama. And plus, we're not even counting like the white paint or the faded, kind of white paint that's on this stuff here. There's some really great shading on the rope as well, and some highlighting. Lots of depth and dimension on this piece here. And then we come to the bridge itself too, which, let's take it from this angle. Maybe you guys can see things a little bit better now too. But, even this stuff, I mean, gorgeous wooden texture on that. These planks just look amazing. They really do. And again, there's a lot of really great paint detail on this. It's funny because, like, they're actually hollow, and that it kind of, I feel like, when I say hollow, I should point out too, that means that there's really nothing on the bottom of this. It's just, this is the setup, how it looks from underneath. But something about it, and maybe the way that it just sounds when you touch it, because there is nothing underneath it, it kind of feels different from everything else here. And that almost helps you separate it and make you think that maybe it is actually wood, even though it's not. And I also have to say that I dig the rope here. You can see on the rope bridge, just so much really wonderful detail here. I mean, this is a knockout piece. It really is. And you consider that this is a PVC figure diorama, so I think these guys are now going for about, like, I think $60 or something like this. Low end 50 for this, higher end maybe 60, maybe a little bit more now, because again, inflation has caused everything to go up in price. But this is a pretty unique Indiana Jones statue here, and it's a very, very spectacular looking piece. If I was gonna, let's say, tell you guys which one to get for sure as your only piece, I don't really know, because Diamond's doing a lot this year with Indiana Jones, so I couldn't tell you what to do or not to do in this case. But for me, this is a very strong one that I didn't think was going to be quite as strong, because I didn't really think much of this. I mean, Temple of Doom is a great film, of course, don't get me wrong, but as far as like merch and collectibles, this would be like the last scene I would have ever thought of getting in collectible form like this. And it also kind of begs the question, looking at this piece and the way that it is assembled here with this kind of like half bridge and these ropes, almost, well, actually, no, they are absolutely symmetric to each other. They're very flat here. I wonder if that means we might be getting a second piece for this statue and perhaps completing this scene down the line. So imagine that, if you will, that there could be a follow-up here, and I'm sure there will be follow-ups of more characters in the Temple of Doom, for sure. There has to be, assuming that they can get the licenses. But just imagine what could be if this ends up being a two-part statue. That would really make this thing even more exciting than it already is. Let's do one last rotation as I give you guys my final thoughts on this piece here, and make sure I also didn't miss any details while we're doing it. But for real, I mean, well, okay, as soon as they start rotating, I'm like, oh yeah, details. We didn't even talk about the machete because I was so into everything else here. The machete, the fact that his hand is bandaged. Wow, talk about attention to detail. I mean, if you missed that, the hardcore Indiana Jones fans would not be happy. But yeah, like every little detail seems to be there, and stuff that like you just don't even think about is there. I mean, even the way that his cuffs are done over here, or undone rather. So much little detail. Gorgeous job on the sculpting here. Like really, the team behind this piece should very much be proud of themselves here. And it is a shame that we don't know who sculpted this, because again, normally the packaging tells us that. This time, we don't have that information. And really, I want to shout out whoever did this piece, because you guys did an amazing job here. So yeah, for real. Hats off to the team at Diamond Select for working on such an amazing piece. And yes, I'm going to give this a definite high recommend. Let's do a nice fancy pan, why don't we? Look at that. Just look at all this detail here. Amazing. This is, wow. This really is an amazing piece. Highly recommend this. And again, we're just finishing on that likeness because why the heck not? But really, I mean, this is a solid, strong piece and a very affordable piece at that. Now, if you want to add this Indiana Jones Temple of Doom statue, PVC figure, diorama, yada, 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 all the things to your statue collection, go ahead and check out the affiliate links in the description of this video below. If you happen to click any of those links and make any purchases, it helps support this YouTube channel at no extra cost to you. So until next time, I'm Matthew. This has been Nerd News Today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time with more action figure reviews, statue reviews, and everything else we do here on the channel.